We have one day and one day only to get this garden in tip-top shape and prepped for winter. So today we are going to be cleaning out the entire garden, planting some garlic, and winterizing my irrigation system. If you're new here, hi, my name is Marcia. I'm the Black Thumb Gardener. I live in Ontario, Canada, USDA Zone 5B. And if you saw my last video, you would have seen that I already had 2 snowfalls and several hits of frost that came through this garden. So we do not have any time to spare. So I'm gonna get right to it. But if you're new here, I'd love for you to subscribe. And if you're returning, welcome back. And thank you for supporting the channel. And I'm gonna enjoy today in the garden because it's gonna be sunny today. And because this is our last day, I hope you enjoy this video in the garden. We will be doing more videos going forward, but inside the house, doing all things like seed starting, continuing our preservation from all the things that we've harvested, and much more. So like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and let's get started. So we're gonna start off clearing this Vagel raised bed that we just harvested from. I'll link the video for that harvest in the description below, but this raised bed was my allium patch in the spring, summer. I planted garlic here along with leeks and onions, and then in late summer I planted my fall garden here full of brassicas like broccoli, cauliflower, and kale, and I even had some carrots and cabbages and loads of herbs. What's left here are the carrots that I didn't thin out that were just too small to bring inside, and the remaining parsley I didn't harvest, and I think I also have some leftover winter savory too. Now this bed is one of my favorites because of how versatile it is. I think there are 9 configurations you can do with this bed, and I especially love the accessories that it comes with. You'll see in the front of the raised bed I do have some lights from Vago that are really nice because they're magnetic and they just connect right onto the beds. Very, very easy to install. And the only issue that I have though with this bed is its location. It's right along the fence I share with my neighbor, and during the summer he was spraying some sort of chemical on his side, and then I stopped to ask him what it was he was doing, and it was some sort of weed killer his friend gave him for the grass. I don't personally spray weed killer in my grass. I used to when we first bought this house, and then over the years when I built out my garden, I just stopped altogether just because I was really concerned of runoff into the soil and contaminating it. So I pull all my weeds by hand. So if you see the back full of weeds, you'll know that's why, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So I did ask him what chemical he was using. Again, it was a weed killer for the grass. And because I was so concerned because of how close he was to the side fence, I did ask if he was kind enough not to spray, and he was really good about it. We had a quick conversation because he was also growing veggies in his backyard. So I was telling him that it may not be a good idea to spray near things that he was planning on consuming. He was really cool about it. But other than that, the only other issue I have with this bed is that it gets morning sun and afternoon shade. So I find that I'm kind of limited to what I can grow here because of the sun requirements. Other than that, I do love this raised bed. I believe it was a gift from my husband for Christmas or Mother's Day. Now that this bed is clear, I can finally remove this garden mesh and the super hoops attached to it. If you're growing brassicas, especially in the spring, then I highly, highly recommend using a mesh cover because this thing is definitely a game changer. The mesh did such a good job at protecting my brassicas from the cabbage moth that the only pest issue I had in this bed were the slugs, and while I could have used diatomaceous earth to deal with them, I just couldn't be bothered reapplying it each time it rained. but that was it. That's the only pest pressure I really had in this bed. Now, if you're interested in picking up this mesh, I'll add it to the link below for Amazon. The Super Hoops, however, I cannot link because the company I bought it from, which is Vessi Seeds, does not sell it anymore, but a viewer had commented in my last video that they bought these individual panels from Home Depot for a few dollars and it works just the same. So I would highly recommend doing that. I do have a version of this that I picked up from Dollarama that I used in the spring. I think it was about $5 for the whole kit, and it works really well, but I have found that the plants eventually outgrew the hoops because of how small they were, but it definitely works if that's something that you're looking for that's pretty affordable. I'm going to be storing these panels in the garage, and then I'm going to be pulling them back out for the spring garden. Let me know in the comments if you've already started planning out your 2026 garden. I'm still recovering from my 2025 garden season, but I'll be right back at it again in December with more seed starting and much more. So stay tuned to the channel if you want to follow along and see my garden transformation again from seed to harvest. So now we're on to my main gardening space. In this area, I have 6 raised beds here for my vegetable gardening. And then I have a back wall that you don't really see here that I use as a perennial flower garden. But right now I'm starting off with removing the leftover bean plants I dumped here that were not ready for harvest. I recently posted a video on how I was curing some of my bean plants indoors that were partially ready for harvest, but these plants did not have any mature pods at all. They were completely green, so I left them outside. Now I was going to leave them on these beds, but I decided just to get rid of them and start fresh for next year. This was kind of like a bonus crop for me. This was supposed to be a full garlic bed, but only a few of them came up, so I ended up late in the season planting just a bunch of bean plants here, but I think it was too late to plant some of those seeds. I also grew alyssum in the corner of this bed, and it looked absolutely gorgeous. And then in the early fall, I removed the original plant that was here that was a bit wilted and planted some volunteer alyssum seedlings that sprouted nearby, and that did well too. So I just love the look of how alyssum cascades down the raised bed. I think this is going to be something I do again for next year. And I'm sure that there are a few alyssum seedlings that are sitting somewhere that are lying dormant that will sprout up next year. So I hope this area just naturally continually grows alyssum for the next few years coming through. And it brings a ton of beneficial insects with it. It smells good. And then what's left in this bed is a lavender plant that did not bloom this year. So I'm hoping it makes it through winter and I can harvest some fresh lavender from it next season. Moving on to the next raised bed. This was one of my fall garden raised beds that I planted with white cosmos, leafy greens, and some root crops. Now the flowers were absolutely beautiful and I was able to harvest a bouquet before the frost. However, the rest of the crops didn't do as well as I expected. The beets didn't have enough time to grow. The spinach seeds I planted here were stolen by birds, not once, twice. And the variety of sugar snap peas I planted did not do well. I tried out this new variety that's supposed to be a bushing type of sugar snap peas from West Coast Seeds, and that did not do well at all. So I will not be repeating that next season. But I did get a really good carrot harvest and a good leafy green harvest. This is the second year that I've planted a garden in the fall and in the spring, specifically a brassica garden in the spring and the fall. And I've realized that in the spring, the harvest of my brassicas, they're so much bigger and more prolific than the fall. But the carrots that I harvest in the fall taste better than they do in the spring, and I think that's just because as the weather gets colder, the carrots become sweeter and it's a really nice flavor. It looks like I also forgot that I planted radishes in this bed too, so I guess I get a treat out of cleaning up this raised bed. I think this is the last bed that we have to clean, and then we get to plant some garlic. This is a 3-foot raised bed that my husband built a few years back, and it's one of my favorites because of the height. I don't have to bend down to garden, which makes it so easy to plant in. And guys, I'm not a young spring chicken anymore. I'm getting older, so this makes such a huge difference. Now, in this bed, I had 2 tomato plants, one that was a determinate plum tomato, and the other one was a cherry tomato. And then in the front, I had my sweet pepper row, and then this parsley plant was in the corner. The peppers did not do well for me at all because the tomato plants just took over and they didn't have enough sun. But this parsley plant has been thriving, especially as the weather got cooler. It just continued to grow. I have harvested so much from this one plant, but it's finally time for it to go. I use parsley in my cooking every single day, and I'm so tempted to harvest whatever's left here, but I have way too much parsley inside right now, and I really don't need any more. We are finally done with cleaning the raised beds. Everything is looking really good, and I'm happy we finally gotten this garden task done. But before we finish with this area, I need to remove the fountain in the back garden bed. Now, this fountain was a new addition this season. I picked this up in the spring on clearance from Home Depot for about $40, and it's added so much charm and functional use in my garden. The birds and the pollinators have been all over this thing throughout the season. It's been such a treat to see them hanging out, and sometimes I would just sit on my deck and watch the fountain and read a book. It's brought so much peace to my garden, and this $40 that I've spent has been totally worth it. Now I'm going to be wrapping this up and keeping it in the garage for the winter, and the solar fountain will also be in the garage as well. Now this solar fountain was purchased from Amazon, and I think I paid about $20 for it, but I'll see if I can find the link and add that below. Now we just planted a whole bunch of spring bulbs in this area, and I cannot wait to set up the fountain again, surrounded by all of the beautiful blooms. If you're interested to see what I planted, you can also check out that video in the link below. It's finally time to plant more garlic. I'm going to be starting off by topping up this raised bed with more potting mix. Over the gardening season, the soil levels have completely dipped, and adding a fresh layer of soil creates a nice base for the garlic to grow in. This is the second raised bed that I'm planting garlic in. Behind me, 2 beds down, I planted my first round of garlic in early fall. Now, I'm not going to go into the mechanics of how to plant garlic in this video. I have a whole video that I dedicated this fall that goes step by step on how to plant garlic, along with 6 mistakes you should avoid for a successful harvest next season. If you're interested in seeing that video, it will also be added to the links below in the description. Since I have a bag of worm castings lying around the garden, I'm also going to add a hefty chunk of that into this bed and smooth it all out. You really don't need worm castings, but I like to add it anytime I'm planting veggies in the garden. This is the only thing I'm really adding to amend the soil when planting garlic. You don't need any granular fertilizers or anything like that. The garlic bulb has everything it needs to sprout. So this year I mentioned in my garlic planting video that I bought 5 pounds of seed garlic because I wanted at least double what I harvested this season. I bought my garlic from Vessi Seeds. Last year I bought my garlic from West Coast Seeds, and these are pretty much the 2 companies that I usually order seeds from. Vessi's is really good at stocking determinate tomato varieties and unique flower varieties as well. And West Coast Seeds is really good at veggies, like really, really good at veggies. Some of my favorite veggie varieties are from West Coast Seeds. So while I'm separating this garlic, I came to a very disturbing realization, which is that most of these bulbs have mold and are ruined. That's totally my fault because after planting my first round of garlic, I left the box closed beside the heater for at least a month, and so most of these bulbs are ruined. I was able to find a few good cloves to fill this bed, but I'm really sad about it because number one, this is a waste of money. And number two, I was planning to give a lot of these bulbs to my friends, and I can't believe I had to throw away at least a pound of seed garlic. Anyways, let's plant this garlic. So this is my front yard and I don't show it very often. I actually created a whole front garden planting video this year that's never been posted. Let me know in the comments if I should still post that video, but we are in the front garden to harvest some leaves. I have 2 trees in my front garden and I'm using my 3-in-1 mulcher, leaf blower, and vacuum to shred these leaves, and then we'll be dumping them on the beds we have garlic in. We are finally done with the raised bed area, and now we can finally move on to winterizing the irrigation system. Now, to be honest, this is not a how to winterize because this will be my first winter with the irrigation system that we installed together this year. So if there are any issues, stay tuned and we'll find them out together in the spring. So the first thing I'm doing is removing the Rainbird timer. I'm going to remove the battery at the back and this gets stored inside. Then I'm removing the manifold from the tap. This is what I use to split the water feed to my hose and also to my irrigation system. This will also be stored in my basement away from the cold. I forgot to say that before I did all of this, I turned off the water to the backyard, and once everything was removed, I'm installing this faucet protector which will help to protect the faucet from freezing. I don't usually do this, but I'm trying it out this year because our winters keep getting worse. The next area of my irrigation system I thought would be vulnerable was the connection point to my timer, which includes the tube adapter, the pressure regulator, and the backflow preventer. I'm using these foam insulators. They're like pool noodles to wrap around this section of the tubing. Now, I would have liked to do this throughout my entire irrigation system, wrap all the tubing with this foam, but I figured I'd start with this section because it was the most vulnerable, and if I have time, I'll add foam to the other lines around the garden. Now, if you haven't seen the irrigation installation, I'll add that in the link below. I go through step by step how I set up this system, especially since the raised beds were already installed. And I also go through the cost of this entire system, which I think is important to know if you're thinking about installing irrigation in your garden. Believe me, I was surprised by the total cost of my system. Now I'm going to secure the foam with some cable ties to make sure that the tubing is properly wrapped, and that's it. Guys, I can't believe an entire gardening season has passed, and now it's finally time for the garden to rest and do it all over again in 2026. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.